Today we're going to be talking with Sharon Prince, who's the founder and CEO of Grace Farms in New Canaan, Connecticut. But more importantly, she's the principal author with many others of an incredible report. It's about 100 pages called Design for Freedom. And this is something that I heard about from Kim Lombardozzi, an old friend in the sustainability field. And she said, Robert, what are you doing about Design for Freedom? I said, what is that? So Sharon, welcome to Horizon TV, and tell us what is Design for Freedom, and what are you trying to do here?
Well, first of all, Rob, thank you for now being a part of the movement. This is how we get Design for Freedom on the ACE agenda. And actually, we're hoping to also get it on the business agenda, because essentially, this is a business issue. Design for Freedom is a new movement that we have initiated out of Grace Farms to create a radical paradigm shift to remove forced and child labor from the building material supply chain, which is a mammoth supply chain. It's the largest industrialized sector that is at the highest risk of forced and child labor, and yet it's been given a labor transparency pass.
Do I understand that there's something like 152 million children globally who are involved in child labor, and that there's 25 million people who are involved in essentially slavery? Not all of those are in construction or making of materials, but I mean, that's the dimensions, isn't it?
Yeah, so even since in 2020, we issued that report that substantiates the movement and the issue. And even since then, the ILO has come out with new numbers just in the last year for representing 2021. And astonishingly, over 28 million are now in forced labor conditions around the world. And this report is based on the global estimates on modern slavery. Child labor has also increased during the same time by 8.4 million, which is it's really hard to digest, right? So 160 million.
Wow.
It's during the same time, and of those millions, children between the ages of 5 and 17 years old are engaged in child labor.
Wow. Do you have any sense, Sharon, your whole point with this Design for Freedom movement is to make our architects, engineers, contractors, and all their firms, the owners, developers in the first world aware of this situation? Do you have any sense of those big numbers, how much is involved in producing construction materials and stuff that would go into buildings? You have a feel for that at all?
Well, we do, because the construction industry is a leading contributor to the crisis, and people that are in those forced labor conditions are likely to be within the full end-to-end supply chain. So you think about the extraction level, it's not only within one material that would be needed, let's say, for minerals. It's minerals extraction. So within that extraction level, you have forestry, timber, you have textiles, agriculture. So the construction sector itself, you have to not only consider end-to-end, but also the scale and the nature of how many materials comprise a building, right?
Right. You have a chart. You have a chart in the report. I'm holding it up, but we'll post it in here, of 12 raw and composite materials at highest risk of embedded slavery. And it includes rubber, glass, fiber, textile, steel, electronics, bricks, timber, stone, copper, iron, minerals, and precursors. A lot of stuff. Are there one or two of these that are really of greatest concern to Design for Freedom and the work that you're doing?
Well, the first people to adopt Design for Freedom principles are going to be those that care about sustainably designing a building. So you've been asked the question, are we also designing ethically using materials made without forced labor? So the ones the two that are concerned to me are, while we're trying to pursue sustainable solutions environmentally, we've forgotten the human component. Who's making those materials? Where they come from? And so some of the greatest concern I have is with timber and polysilicon, which are used in these environmentally sustainable solutions in both mass timber and also solar panels. So with timber, it's one of the most widely used construction materials. Imported into the US, it's the 5th largest product by value that is at risk of forced labor, according to the Global Slavery Index. And then forced labor in also for timber, it comes especially from countries at risk like Brazil, Peru, Russia, which is now, that's why you know your supply chain is, where those materials are coming from. Russia was a big producer. And it's also concerning that polysilicon is used in solar panels. About 45 to 50% of the global supply of solar grade polysilicon comes from the Uyghur region in China, where more than 1, and now they say almost 2, are held in forced labor camps.
What is that region, please? What section?
The Uyghur region.
Oh, the Uyghur region. Yeah. Mm-hmm,
yes.
Yeah.
And so there's the Uyghur Forced Labor Protection Act now that prohibits any goods made with from that region from entry into the United States. And right now there's a 1/6 of the estimated installation of solar panels, that value is being seized at the border right now because of the law that went into effect just a month ago, a couple months ago. So now we've got, so you can see that there's, when you have when you don't respect your supply chain, it's monolithic, and you're dependent on it. It's not only a legal risk, certainly a humanitarian risk. That's what we're focused on, but also a business risk as well.
Yeah. Tell me a couple of things. It's kind of a related pair of questions. One is, why has this really just started to bubble up? I mean, I know you were working on it several years ago with the late Bill Menking, who was the distinguished editor of the Architects newspaper, and you've got a working group of 60, many folks who are working and who helped you produce this massive document. But why has it taken the AEC and the owner developer industry so long? And what do you want them to do? What do you want?
Okay, so first of all, you can see that we're a bifurcated industry, not even just bifurcated, very disaggregated. So after we initialize well, actually, I should go back to even how the whole epiphany happened for me, right?
Yeah, right.
It actually is the result of the aspiration of Grace Farms to put you in proximity to people and sectors that can then really drive humanitarian outcomes, advance grace and peace in the world. So ironically, our investment architecture met our commitment to a just, more equitable world. And then the realization that I realized that there was a labor transparency pass given to the entire sector. So we started to galvanize. Then you start to galvanize. The idea for Grace Farms also like partnerships, public-private partnerships that we're doing. So we've now galvanized up to 80, actually more than 80 leaders in the full ecosystem of built environment. So it's not just the A sector, but we need artists, media, we need the universities, we need public demand, manufacturers. So we need the full ecosystem, and owners need to mandate it, and they can, and they should. And so the other thing I let people know, especially in the universities, when they come out of university, you have agency. We all have agency. You can not only ask the question, are our buildings being made ethically without forced labor, as well as sustainably designed? But this is a legal issue. It's different than the green building movement, which is more of an opt-in. This is a legal issue, which we just described. There's, slavery is legal around the world, and it's not, so this is a different humanitarian crisis. And once you know, you can't unknow it. You've got to do something about it. Right?
So I presume that you would like to see AEC firms and others adopt ethical sourcing policies and choose products that are free of forced labor and so forth. I guess that's the main thing that DFF Design for Freedom wants to do. I understand you've initiated a technical piece of this called Sustain, or you're working with something called Sustain Chain technology platform, where Well, you tell me what sustain chain
Okay.
is. Okay.
Okay. So part of getting the public, well, part of galvanizing a movement is, starting with the working group that are leaders that can also, it's always the CEOs, principals, the leaders, deans, because this is a matter of urgency.
Hmm.
We need to adopt these principles quickly, and we need leaders who are going to they're first going to commit and then figure out how to do it. There's no answers. We're working on the answers together. So
Okay.
now sustain chain comes in to be able to aggregate information there's a dearth of data right now, and that's certainly important. The other thing that you asked is like, why are we so late in construction? It's not only the proximities, but there's two halves of the labor issue in construction. One you can see, which is on the job site, and the other is material procurement, which is opaque.
Hmm.
And labor inspection has to go beyond the perimeter of the job site.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty tall order. And what we are,
Particularly when there are anywhere from, you know, literally tens of thousands of products that go into a major project of any
right,
kind. A 24-story office building has
right.
10, 15, 20,000 different products that go into that building. So yeah,
So
I
we're
mean, it's how are you going to
right.
sort, how are you going to know where the sourcing is on all that? Yeah.
Right. So we're not looking, we're looking to start. We have to
Mm.
start the process. We're looking
Okay.
for everyone should today start with at least one material. We have a toolkit that is for the profession to be able to start to use not only present the issue to suppliers, to clients, and so forth, but also to have the tracking system in place to start tracking those materials that already have certifications or can pursue certifications that include labor inputs.
All right. Is
So
that
we're
and
not starting from scratch.
is that the sustain chain
No, that's
platform?
not sustain
Oh,
chain.
okay.
Sustain chain is going to be it just initiated, and what it does is it identifies the UN SDGs that within many corporations can start to move towards achieving those SDGs.
All right. And
8.7.
let's just, in case anybody doesn't know, SDG stands for Sustainable Development Goals. So, and
Right,
that's part of the
and
UN Global Compact and so forth. Yeah. Okay.
and
I'm
that's a
sorry.
sustain. So yeah, right, but it's good because sustain chain is in partnership with the UN. It's
Right.
part
Right.
of that. So
Okay.
that allows everyone, not just the working group and not just those who, it's like everyone can start to aggregate data there, and that's just beginning.
Okay. Now Kim asked, Kim Lamaderzi, who got me into this topic. She said, well, I'm working for a manufacturer now, and if I submit to that, uh, what's going to happen to the data? Is it going to be aggregated? Is it going to be made available so that others can benefit from that? What's going to happen to the and I hate to use the term, the transparency of the data, if you will.
Yeah. So we have pilot projects we've initialized. So before sustain chain, we have pilot projects too. And those are, so we have 5 projects on 3 continents, 2 in the United States. One is in Newark. It's Nina Cook John's Harriet Tubman Monument,
Hmm.
called Shadow of a Face. So we've been able now to trace those materials. A brief will be produced that will provide transparency to everyone.
Hmm.
The other one is our own, at Grace Farms, we have a piece called Temporal Shift by Allison Schatz, a sculptor. Every project has capacity that goes beyond what you might expect. So with this one, North American Stainless Steel is the primary material, and it's the second largest supplier of stainless steel in the world. We were able to go to them with this very small amount of materials to ensure it was ethically sourced. And we also found out the rebar was untraceable. So these are things you find out within a project, what's
Hmm.
traceable, what's not. And then the other project in London is the Serpentine Pavilion, Black Chapel with the Astor Gates, the artist.
Yes.
And that was opened in June. We had a convening there, so the capacity of these pilot projects goes beyond the examination. It's also creating transformational change. That's what we're looking for with very visible projects. These are all public projects. So
Yeah.
that we have a brief that you can find online too that shows
Right.
you what those materials are. That one's complete, so you can see that. And the other
Right.
one's in India. So we have 3 continents covered, and
Yeah.
this is how it all begins.
And there are links to the projects in the report, if I remember correctly,
Not to those. So in the toolkit,
in the toolkit.
the
Okay.
toolkit we have, and also just online, we have a website, designforfreedom.org, where you can find all of the materials.
Okay. Great. Okay. Um, uh, Rand Ekman, who's Chief Sustainability Officer at HKS Architects and a member of one of your working group, had a couple of questions. One was, what's what do you think is the business connection or the client's perspective on this? My readers, my audience has to go out and sell this idea to their client. This is a major concern that we have as design and construction professionals. And the client says, oh my God, another thing I got to deal with. How are you going to address that question?
So first of all, we're not creating a separate lane for design for freedom. It is additive. It is part of sustainability. We're expanding the definition of sustainability.
Okay.
So it has to be both ecologically, environmentally. Ecological means all of us humans too. So removing forced labor from the building material supply chain is a business issue. And there's an inverse relationship between driving costs lower and raising human costs without inspection of those materials. We're also limiting innovation. So think about it, when we're dependent on cheap materials, there's a lack of investment in R&D dollars because there's no commercial viability of those outcomes. That's true with solar panels. You can think about the organic cells and the provokite cells that were limited in production. Now look, these solar panels are just like they looked like a while ago. There's been very little development because of the cheap nature of polysilicon, which has been subsidized with forced and child labor. Another way to look at it is that we're just accepting the slavery discount.
Okay.
Think about that, so that's where, we just can't accept that, right? So now it stifles this cheap and exploitable labor, stifles the modernization of an industry that is sorely in need of it. We're a low EBIT industry. So just think about the capacity for innovation. And, when you know your supply chain, just like we are with carbon sequestration, we're looking at materials. So we're in a prime spot now to start to add labor inputs to what we're already, we understand that there's supply chain. We understand now supply chain around the world matter, right? We understand there's, we can look at materials more myopically with carbon sequestration as an imperative. Now we need to have, the imperative needs to be, we have to know that those materials that we put into our beautiful buildings that we live in, our homes, offices, infrastructure, are made with fair labor.
Okay. Two final questions, and they're kind of related. One is, are you getting any pickup from building product manufacturers? I see that Herman Miller, for example, is involved in your program and so forth, and the trade associations that are intrinsic to my audience, the AIA, the Associated General Contractors, the ABM, yes, and ABC, Associated Building Contractors. What are you hearing from the trade associations and from the product manufacturers, and what do you want from them?
Okay, so we want transparency, but we're going to start somewhere, right? But first, everybody has to know, just like yourself. We have to first make it known, which we have within the AIA National. We had our first full panel just this last June with the State Department and OBO, Overseas Business Operations. So think about that lever. We have very important large-scale companies, construction companies, that also work with all these manufacturers. So now there's going to be a cascading effect with these commitments. And the commitments start with, in terms of scale, OBO, State Department, and that's now known. That was just a few weeks ago at the State Department when I spoke to them. We had a advisory meeting that they also put out publicly. They have it on their website, the AIA National Committee. So they're committed. They're vocal about it. How incredible is that, right? This is game changing. And then we also have other partners. AECOM was a tremendous partner on our first international pilot project with the Serpentine, closer to home in New Canaan. Turner Construction is the contractor of our first building project here at the New Canaan Library. And now they're working on implementing Design for Freedom principles more broadly. I'm speaking with their teams at ESG Summit in a few weeks. Manufacturers are there. You can see this is how we can, have this cascading effect. pretty, very quickly.
Right. Okay. Well, I've been speaking with Sharon Prince. She's the founder and CEO of Grace Farms, and the leader on this new initiative called Design for Freedom. And we'll post the availability of the document. I encourage everybody to read it and look at the various chapters and case studies and just get a sense of how important this issue is. Sharon, thanks for your time today. It's been a pleasure to speak with you.
Oh, you too. Thanks so much.